See Brown in your face.
Have you heard of Everything at Once?
Do you know about Everything at Once?
It's internationally known.
Aliens listen to it.
It's the best ever.
If there's something you're looking for in the 814, or feeling a little bored and think there ain't no more, check out Everything at Once and allow it to be your source. It's that raw podcast that's always showing support, highlighting the scene. No need to take I-90 to Peep or 79 to see how it be. Interviewing your locals with mindsets that are global. Innovators and creators on every single upload. So much going on in the EPA.
Incredible content.
Everything at Once will keep you up to date.
Amazing guests.
What you doing? Come through and hang with Tony and Dave.
Community driven.
Bringing everything at once from around the way. Everything at once from around the way. Hey.
Please listen. We love you. Everything at Once.
Everything at Once.
It's time to introduce this show.
The best show on the face of the planet.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in today. We want to thank our Patreon producers, Brian G., Josh W., Ian D., Nick G., and Sadie M.
Patreon, it's an awesome way to support the show and say thanks. You can become a Patreon supporter by clicking the link below and choosing to be an intern, assistant, or producer level supporter.
If being on the production team is too much pressure for you, you can also send any contributions using our Venmo at Everything at Once Studios. We now want to thank all the local businesses who supported this episode. These businesses get the Everything at Once stamp of approval and are critical members of the Everything at Once community. We couldn't do it without them. With winter approaching, are there any last minute details that you want to change or renovate around your home?
I might, but you know who to call.
Yeah, Ghostbusters!
No, Tony. No, not Ghostbusters. Solid State Construction.
Oh, yeah. Solid State.
Yeah.
Duh. Solid State takes pride in all their home remodeling projects. Solid State specializes in bathroom remodeling, kitchen renovation, window and door installation, custom design work, and more, including painting, flooring, drywall, sidewalk, decks. Get your free quote today by calling Nick at 814-397-7854. Solid people, solid product, Solid State Construction.
You know, Tony, with all these renovations from Solid State, I think we might have kicked up some bad energy around here. Yeah, oh yeah. Luckily, we know just the people to go see.
I know it this time. It's Ghostbusters.
No, Tony! Our friends at Cauldron and Thorne.
Wow. I feel really dumb right now, and I can't believe I didn't think of Cauldron and Thorne, the world's largest witchcraft and metaphysical shop, with everything a person needs to channel the spirit world.
Practice some self-care.
Find enlightenment.
Curse your enemies.
Protect yourself from your enemies.
Bless your friends.
Cleanse your space from negative energies. You can check out all the magical wares available at for these different practices we all love and enjoy at Cauldron and Thorne, 2724 West 8th Street, or online at cauldronandthorne.com.
This week, we have an incredible guest for you.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey.
Glad to have you back, Josh,
Yes.
and I'm glad you brought your partner with you, Dale.
Yes.
It's been like almost a year since you were down here last time, and now I feel like you've always been out doing the homestead stuff,
Yes.
farming, growing things, but now you guys are like, I feel official in my head.
Yes.
Now that there's like a Facebook business page and
Right.
stuff like that.
We named the place.
Named it.
Maybe 2 months ago.
Named it and made it Facebook official.
Facebook. Ooh, wow.
I
It's
know.
like you guys are in a new relationship.
That actually became Facebook official, I think, yesterday. He said, hey, I got to change my status. So now it's all legit.
100%. What's the name? Tell it to the people. Give it to the people in the camera. Everybody that's watching out there.
We are White Pine Homestead.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Love it.
We just got a bunch of stuff when you guys came down here. You delivered a bunch of really cool things that you made that I'm super excited to partake in
Yeah.
later.
I was joking, saying hey, Tony, I'm sorry we ate the bread.
Oh,
We missed
no.
it. No.
Yeah, and you guys gave me two.
We were really hungry coming in, so there was a high likelihood that could have happened.
Yeah.
We would have lived any farther away. Would have been a loaf and a half.
See, I love the bread, but Celinda really, really loves the sourdough bread, so she would have been the one that you probably would have had to deal with more more than me.
Right.
Yeah, but it's great. It's fantastic, and we got a bunch of pork, which I'm also excited about. I'm sure there's a big difference between your guys' meats and the stuff that I buy in the supermarket.
Yeah.
There is, but you don't know it until you try it. I mean,
It's hard to
people
describe.
can talk about farm-raised or pasture-raised pork or animals, but until you actually cook it and try it. I mean, my pork chop that I remember as a kid was this gray, really kind of just bland grandma's pork chop. And no offense to grandma, she did what she could with what she had.
Right.
But cooking these pork chops were like, I don't know, butter. I mean, the fat is even delicious.
When we got everything back from the butcher the first time, we prepared a meal and ate, and then like a half hour later, Dale's like, "Wait, hey, what's that on your face?" And it was like, it was pork chop.
Going all in.
It's not uncommon anyway, but this was glistening.
This was all the way up. Come on, it was by my.
Shoveling it.
Yeah.
That's the way I eat my stuff too. Is
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
fast. Like I'm on a mission. You know what I mean? Too much trying to eat at my desk at work has turned me into a like big mouthful all the time. Like really
Speed
quick
eater.
speed eater for sure.
Yeah. Well, this will slow you down because every
I'll
bite
enjoy it.
you're having an experience. That's what
So
it can offer
excited.
you.
So excited.
Good.
Yeah. You guys just got some new pigs too. You guys had a bunch of adorable pigs.
Yeah.
Is that
was-
hard?
That's funny. That was the conversation today with Silas. The kids were already focusing in on one becoming a pet. And so yeah, I it's hard, but that part of it's sacred, you know, like that's part of the reason why we're doing what we're doing is because we're still eating meat, you know. And that was the conversation that happened with Silas too, is like culturally wanting to be detached from that process has made our food system really dirty and made it that most food goes 1,500 miles to get where it's going.
Right.
You know, so the conversation with him was, well, I don't think I'm ready to become a vegetarian, and why we are still eating meat. That's why we're going to do it here. You know, and that is a hard part. That's a hard part for a lot of people. That's part of like even us promoting rabbit meat is really tough, man, because people associate it, you know, with the fuzzy bunny and they're great and we love them, you know. So like that reconciliation in our consciousness about being able to love something and still use it in a way that's going to sustain our family it's a much deeper topic than, you know, going to the grocery store and just going to the meat aisle.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and I think that is so important, and I think I've been noticing this a little bit in my food. At least recently, the past couple months, I've been like really busy and eating a lot of like takeout or fast food or whatever I can get, and I look forward to when I'm able to actually cook and prepare that meal, because like I know I put my time into it, I put my effort into it, my energy into it, and made it with like a caring hand with trying to make something that's nourishing me. And it feels like with getting food from your farm, it takes that level of love and compassion for the animals to it, like, and the nourishment that's going into it, the sustaining factor that keeps us alive, that is the reason why we're eating, to like a higher degree, because you guys are with these animals. I know that they're well fed and taken care of and appreciated, and they're not slammed into, you know, 500 into a tiny pen where they can't even move, and they're fighting each other and getting loaded up with growth hormones and antibiotics and everything else that they put in like the mass-produced meat.
Not to mention the fear that is created when those animals do go to butcher, you know, and that fear hormone being injected into our meat, and then that's what we're consuming. That's not what I want in my body. We live in a world where there's already enough fear mongering. There's already enough toxic attributes going on. We don't need to then incorporate that into some of the most, you know, potentially meditative, nourishing, you know, actions that we can take is in our food. We do it several times a day, and how much intention we put behind that is going to change the way that we get to operate in the world, that energy exchange that's happening.
And I think that eating can really be like a very mindful process if you allow it to be. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
When I was working in the mental health field, I would actually teach a class about eating food mindfully. Like, that's kind of how I would introduce mindfulness. I'd give them a piece of chocolate and they would eat it like normally. And then I'm like, okay, now this one, try to eat it slow and taste it and absorb it and feel the mouth sensations that are going on and kind of awaken that ability to like really be present in the moment and enjoy something and take something in and get that experience.
It reminds me of, I remember watching this documentary about this Buddhist, and I forget what country it was in. It was in Southeast Asia, but like part of their practice was they had to eat everything just like.
Did he move to France at one point?
I don't remember.
Because it's funny that you came right in on that, because when Tony was saying it, that's like straight Thich Nhat Hanh, like bringing mindfulness to every moment. And he had eating meditation.
Oh yeah, and he was talking about part of like their practice was they had to eat every morsel just slow and really enjoy every bit of it. And part of their meditation practice was, I forget if it was every day or once a week, they'd bring out ice cream, and the ice cream would look delicious, but they had to eat at the same speed, and the ice cream was always melted by the time they could eat it. That just made me think of that, because they never got the ice cream.
It's just as delicious melted, though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I would just drink it. Like.
All the same sugars and fats are still there.
There's a story, Viktor. It's one of my favorite stories. But Viktor Frankl was a prisoner in a Russian gulag.
Man's search for meaning.
Yes, and his purpose every morning was to go out and bless the water. That's all the water that he had, and he went out and he blessed the water, and in doing so, gave himself purpose every single day and created an opportunity for other people and inviting other people to come out and do the same thing. And those were the people that survived. Those were the people that found purpose in their everyday through awful conditions, awful situations. And that's purpose. That's meaningful.
And that's one of the leading contributing factors towards life expectancy as well. From different things I've read and different things I've listened to, is that like people who feel like they have a community and a sense of purpose tend to live longer because they have that reason to wake up in the morning. And giving gratitude for something that is often taken for granted, like water, is something that I think is very important, because I feel like that keeps us humble in a way. You know what I mean? To give thanks for that, and to almost marvel at like, how we get our water. You know what I mean? Like, it just comes out of my sink here, and I have as much or as little as I want, and I can make it whatever temperature I want. And really, that is such like a monumental feat of human accomplishment, just to have like these intricate sewerways and water pumps and everything that just brings this to my house so I can, flip on my faucet.
I think that the further we get away from having to put that work in to like get something, the more that human beings almost separate themselves from the planet that they're living on.
Absolutely.
You guys, you're hitting all right on it. So like on the drive-in, Dale was like we know why we're doing what we're doing, but to bring it into words like, okay, well, why are we doing this? What is White Pine Homestead about? And I didn't even share that, but like so it was sinking in on the drive-in of we're trying to create a space and emotion for people to reconnect with mama, reconnect with the land, and that's part of what we're doing, and it comes in all the ways that we're doing it, but that is the main focus, is to get to people to reconnect, to recreate a relationship with the land, because just what you're saying, Dave, that's like, we absolutely take it for granted, and that goes back to that mindfulness that you were talking about.
Right.
And it starts with ourselves. So, along those same, absolutely, that's the value set. That's that we're looking for. And I can't choose a life, and I can't reconnect or talk about reconnecting if I'm not doing those things myself.
Right.
And so taking a look, at where we are and what we're doing, you know, how did we get there? It's like, well, I'm living in a world of hypocrisy. I'm talking about what I want to do. I'm talking about how I'd like to live, or I'm preaching about these things being good or these things being right, but am I doing it? And I'm living in a square house in a square city on a square block, and not. I wasn't doing it.
Right.
And so this gives us and strips away, you know, a lot of that kind of the situations that we find ourselves in. It strips that away, and it says to me, how do you want to live? And that purpose every day, getting up, going out, feeding the animals, taking a look at our gardens, you know, putting our hands in the soil, that reconnects, that gives me purpose, you know, which in turn gives our animals purpose, you know. There's nothing taken for granted. You know, we go out and we haul our spring water from the spring, you know. You're going to use a little bit less or be a little bit more mindful when you know that you have to go out and refill your bottles and bring it back in.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, and putting in that extra work, I think, adds value to it, because I've found over time, especially over this past year, really, the more I work on something, the more I appreciate it once it's done or once it reaches a certain level of accomplishment. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that kind of goes back to like the like psychological dissonance. You know what I mean? The harder we work for something, like there was an old experiment about sororities and fraternities and the hazing process, and it turns out that the people who were hazed the worst, maybe this is a poor example, but enjoy their sorority or their fraternity or say that it's more important to them. And in the same way, that same principle applies to having to pick up the water from the spring and bring it in instead of just turning on the tap like I do. You know?
Right. Poor example or not, the point is the pain that we have to go through, you know, we can appreciate what's on the other side of that if we choose
to be aware,
to be aware of it, you know. So all of the experiences that any of us have up until this point, you know, nothing is you know, I don't look back and wish anything didn't happen, because all of that has led me to having a greater awareness and a greater gratitude for exactly where we are, that we do have clean water, that we do have fresh food, that we do have fresh produce. Our hope and our prayer is that that can continue.
Right.
And it won't unless we take certain steps. And that means getting up every day and going and feeding animals, going out and planting seeds, going out and putting a tree in the ground.
Making those social media posts and becoming a business, an official
absolutely
entity.
And that's you know, it's a means to an end. You know, are we social media what do they call them?
Gurus, experts?
But no,
neither are we.
I have friends that know far more than I do. What are those? They're on Instagram and they're like
influencers.
Oh God. Yeah. Okay. So are we influencers?
No, but that's funny because
maybe in our small circle we can be.
Well, and that's what we want to do, and I don't mean that like I don't with the association of what an influencer is right now. I don't have any desire for that, but do I want to influence the world that my children are growing up in? Absolutely.
See, sure.
And that's what they're being exposed to are these social media influencers. That's not the direction when you think of an influencer that we want to move towards. It's more, what can we do in our world that radiates out to those people that know and love us, which reaches out to a greater community to say, what are you doing and how are you doing it? And would you like to learn a different way? Because if you do, it's possible. And it's possible because we have.
It's the influencing though, like it's such an interesting, like nuanced practice. But I also feel like some of the stuff I see, it's like people don't think they're gonna make like a big impact or like they're, you know, whatever, and then you end up with like 5 million people watching, you know, your video or whatever, and it's like, oh shit, you know, like
Well, and for me, it's like, what are we influencing? And most of that is reflective of being profit driven right now.
Sure.
You know, and having prosperity, having abundance. I'm down with all of that, but if you lose your foundation, or if you put the cart in front of the horse in that way, then we have a bunch of people being very loud and you know, essentially influencing unconsciously in a way that's being peer driven and market driven, you know.
It's all a different because like our goal like wasn't, I mean, I guess to be influencers in our own way, but like you said, not like a lot of the influencers that you see out there, you know, we wanted to be local. And we've stuck to that to the most part. You know what I mean? We wanted to spread awareness around here of the cool things and kind of try to raise that vibration around the Erie area, you know, let people know that there are different opportunities out there and people are taking hold of it. And if, you know, we can do it, they can do it. All of you out there can do it as well. And it's just really powerful to see it go on in like a small micro level, because like the people that we're actually going to reach is much more likely to be our close friends and our close family, you know what I mean, over trying to reach some sort of national audience and make $1 million doing crazy stunts or whatever it is that's like trending right now, you know what I mean? One of the bands that came on when we were doing our concert series had a really good song, Dumpster Garden, and it was all kind of faced around like, you know, wanting the attention, because I feel like human beings in general are kind of, we want attention, you know, everybody wants to feel loved and appreciated and all that stuff, but it's the means that a lot of people are provided with to get that attention are through social media and acting out or acting negatively, or, you know, doing something that's going to get people mad or get people upset or make people feel some sort of way. Rather than like actually having like an interaction or like a positive supportive network or community. Like, you know, you guys come on our show, I'm buying meat and sourdough from you, you know, we're both kind of offering each other, and we've been friends for a long time, you know what I mean, and we've always offered like our services and our ability, our knowledge, our wisdom, you know, able to share that. And I think that with the new, like with all the algorithms and stuff that are in the world, it's just hard to reach that kind of and have that kind of intimate, close, personal relationship when everybody's, you know, doing it through a magic rectangle that they keep in their pocket.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it goes back to the senses. It goes back to eating food and tasting it and being present with it. The social media influencers, the way that, in my perspective, the way it looks like right now is that it's a dumbing down of our senses. You know, I can watch, you know, kids that I know, my own children, you know, it watching over and over again something that doesn't necessarily have a rooted purpose in a moral construct, you know. It's not driven by that. It's driven for the laugh. It's driven for attention. And attention, whether it's negative or positive, we need it. And people will seek it, whether it's positive or negative, in whatever way that they can get it. And so that's what's being put out on the stage right now in that world of social media or in that influencer world, is that to what lengths will you go to get that attention? It doesn't need, if we slow it down, if we look at you in the eye, if I look at you and we connect, that's all the attention that needs to be. You know, I can eat 100 burgers and feel like, from some fast food joint, or I could eat one wholesome, nutritious one and be super satisfied. So that comparison, you know, is all about our senses.
Right.
Yeah. It's about instant feedback too, and we've been socially trained for that instant feedback. But that doesn't have anything to do with this, like a sustainable growth. Like so not having 5 million people following you in a month, it's okay, because you're building a foundation for sustainable growth.
Exactly.
And like, even if we look to the mushrooms to understand it better. When a log is getting inoculated, it takes a good deal of time, but when it becomes their time, they flourish. They've taken up all the space that's available, and then they bloom and bloom and bloom and bloom.
And I think that you know, I think it's, you know, really cool what you guys do, and it's like super interesting in comparison to a lot of what's going on in the world, because you know, from things that I read and from, you know, people that I've talked to that have much more knowledge than me, like a healthy brain or like a healthier person is able to like not totally lean into the instant gratification. It's about delayed gratification, you know. You keep hitting that button, or you keep watching the videos, or you keep eating the hamburgers when you're hungry, because your brain's like dopamine, I need more dopamine. So like to slow it down and like smooth things out is just like a lot just healthier way to live.
Absolutely.
That's
Right.
been the story of our lives for the past 3 or 4 years, is that intentional slowing down of life. And what happens is that a greater gratitude for everything that's around us. And you can't possibly have immediate gratification when you're raising animals, when you're tending a garden.
Right.
You plant that seed and you
when
just
you're building your kitchen.
when you're building your kitchen, there's no, I mean, there is no instant gratification there. The delay, though, creates for a much more nourishing life,
Right.
in general. And we talked about sourdough. I mean, that was like I had this whole metaphor on sourdough because I like to control things. I like to know exactly how things are going to go, how they plan out. And sourdough, you're working with a live culture.
Right.
It's its own being, and it responds to temperature and it responds to its environment just like we do. And so to be able to control its outcome, I could take all the steps that they, meaning experts who have done it maybe more times than I have, I can do all those things, but it's still going to respond the way it's going to respond. And I had to have a whole letting go process of, what is this going to look like? What are my expectations for this loaf of bread? And it may seem silly, but when you're creating it and you're working with something that takes, 36 hours from start to finish, you go, wow, was that worth it? And then you eat it and you go, yeah.
Yeah, it was worth it.
It was worth it. Every bit of it. I've had stuff come out that didn't look real pretty. And he's like, I'm eating that one. Don't give that one away. I'm eating that one.
Right.
Because it was in the process, and the beauty of it in that slowing down the fermentation process actually makes it incredibly more digestible for us. So all of those people that are gluten intolerant, right, or gluten sensitive, you ferment through the sourdough fermentation process, it breaks down the gluten to be able to then absorb into your system. And so, gosh, are we gluten intolerant, or are we just eating the wrong things?
Yeah, we're just missing something.
We're missing something, or we're not giving it time. We mass produce and we mass manufacture things.
Right, and it goes back to the conversation leading up to this. It's looked at as separate part of our life. Well, that's just, what I mean? It's not held as sacred.
Right.
It's not a...
I'm picking up my bread from the grocery store that's made in a lab somewhere across the country that's shipped 1,000 miles to my house, and I grab it for the store and I pay $2 for it.
For things to be important to us, they have to be a fundamental part of your life, and fundamental meaning like happening at least on a 2 or 3 times a week, if not on a daily practice. So like we make it part of our life.
Right.
And when
Right.
we make it part of our life, then we're making it sacred, and then it has value to it.
And we connect
But
to
when
our
all
food.
those things are just there, and we don't slow down enough, then it's just there. It's
Right.
not.
I think it's a difficult thing for people because, like, even just thinking of it myself, like I've done a lot of like looking in and research and stuff, but just like the idea of eating healthy is just like such like it seems like unattainable to most people. Like it's like, I'd like to eat better, but the chemical infused bread is 94 cents
that's
for a
what we're
loaf.
talking about, though. If your neighbor had a garden, making it more tangible, bringing it back into our life and making it more tangible, and that's one of the things that we're doing too, is like promoting other local food sources. Like so some of the things coming up, but we were going to try to hit it on this harvest and we didn't, but just going around and doing little recordings of different local food stands and promoting them. This isn't like we have a goal for the farm to be financially stable, but it's not profit driven in that way. Because there's a deeper motivation, because if we want to have a world that's worth living in, this has to happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not a question of whether it should happen or whether it needs to happen. It has to happen. Like maybe not for your kids, but for your grandkids, absolutely. And
Yeah.
that knowledge base that you're talking about, David, it how do you eat healthy? Because it's hard. It's because it's so easily attainable. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
We have to make a choice to say, is this worth it? And then put the effort into it. But eating healthy in and of itself does not have to be rocket science, right? It doesn't. It's the simplicity. If we make things simple again, farm-raised eggs. I can't tell you how many eggs we eat because they're right there, and the things that you can do with that, when that's what you have available, are very easy. But it takes doing it to shift it.
Right.
The reason that it seems complicated is because it's the science of rhetoric. It's so simple. Do you know what I mean? It's so simple, but now we got grocery stores, now we have finances, now we have all these things that seem a hindrance to having a healthy diet. But if we brought more intention to our life, like I saw a study a while back, I forget where it was, I think it was Denmark, that they offered, in the largest city in Denmark, they offered everyone chickens. Okay, like if they wanted them, and like maybe 20% of the population said yes. It decreased, and that's the other thing too. I'm not trying to jump around, but that's the other thing, is that when we start moving in a good way, it's so interconnected. So by giving 1 out of every 5 families chickens, they decreased the landfill by 60%.
Wow.
Because all the organic attributes to that garbage went to the chickens to feed them. The egg business, there was no more egg business in this city. You know what I mean? So like I watched this guy once, I think it was a TED Talk, and he was a systems thinker. It was an autistic man that created systems for like BMW or something like that. And he came to talk about systems, and he said that if you could take one attribute out of a cycle and turn it back on itself, it would change the entire system. So we think all these things have to change, but it's not complicated. You know what I mean? It'd be more of right back to getting in our body, getting in that presence, getting in that eating meditation, and spreading that out into more parts of our life to participate in it, because the things that are kicking our ass are the things that we're not participating in.
Yeah.
You know?
And the act of change starts with one thing. We didn't become where we are right now overnight. It was one conscious decision after the next,
Right.
And then because you're doing that again every day or every 3 times a week, now it's a part of your lifestyle.
Right.
And when your lifestyle starts to shift, you look back and you go, gosh, I used a microwave? For what? What did I use a microwave for? And I haven't had a microwave in, let's see, Eva's 18, over 11 years I haven't used a
Holy shit.
microwave. And now when I do, I go, gosh, that was quick. Oh man, but I haven't had one. And I learned how to cook again. My grandparents knew how to, and there was this generational gap of skill set that was lost. And when we talk about what we're doing, it's like we're first generation farmers or whatever, but like we're learning how to do these things day by day, and it takes making a choice and then practicing it, and then looking back, you go, wow.
Right.
We threw our first workshop like a month ago, and it was on how rabbits could jumpstart your homestead, and we have some people show up, mainly friends and neighbors, and we gather with people and show our gardens, which are beautiful, and we had another organic farmer from the area come, and we've made friends with them. They're good people and humbly participated in all this.
Nice.
And then we went to their house and saw all these amazing gardens, man, like just growing out. So like, I forget what I was getting at, but
We had to start
We had
somewhere.
to start somewhere.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Just like
There's-
everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and in the farm, that's a funny story. Like the farm, the first animals that we got on the farm is we bought a Suburban, and an old man.
It's not an animal.
We bought a
I
Suburban.
mean, it's a beast, but it's not an animal.
This old man that I had pissed off trying to buy this car, like he went back in his house, wasn't even going to talk to me. I had to knock back on the door and be like, all right, I'll give you what you're asking for. We went back to pick it up. He sent us home with what we thought was a chicken and 5 chicks
Yeah.
in a bucket. and a rabbit.
Because we said what we wanted to do, and he goes, "Oh, I got something for you."
And he had a beautiful place. He had rabbits bouncing all over and all kinds of chickens. Well, you go ahead. You tell the end of it, because.
So we get home and we take a look at these, this mama chick and her chickens, and we're raising them up, and this is great. We have the coop from a friend of ours, and we have this rabbit who's beautiful. And I don't know, a couple of weeks go by, we start looking at them, and we're like, those chicks don't look exactly like what this Americana mama looked like. And we look again, and we're like, those things are guinea hens. So this Americana hen had sat on these guinea hens. Now, this guy knew what he was looking at. He knew that those were guinea hens. And if you've ever had or heard a flock of guinea hens, you know that they are probably the most annoying
Most obnoxious.
foul bird. And just goes morning till night. If they see a blade of grass, move, they're clucking and they're talking. And
With no rhyme or reason.
no rhyme or reason, and right outside your window. And so we thought that was our payback. So Josh made this guy annoyed, and he gave us
A bunch of annoying
birds.
Nice.
Yeah.
But the gift was that we started, and we didn't.
Right.
I mean, we slept that night in the house with literally, this bird in a bucket with her chicks, a bucket of chicken, sitting
Right.
next to us. But it started us. We had talked about it. We talked about rabbits, and this made it happen. So then we had that rabbit, and then we said, okay, well, let's look at 2 more. And there was a contact that he had from several years ago that was local.
It said Rabbit Townville.
That was the name of him in this rabbit, Townville. And it called him up, and we got 2 of our first rabbits. And, we've had several different breeders over the past couple of years, but, 52, I think, rabbits right now we have. But it started with one.
Right.
It started with one rabbit. And she's a gift in that way because it got us going.
So how do you, for me right now, this type of lifestyle seems so unobtainable. And I greatly enjoy my life right now. You know what I mean? I like my job. I like doing this podcast stuff, the photography and videography. What was it that brought you to step outside of your normal comfort zone to make that decision to want rabbits or to want chickens? I feel like I've always had this fantasy of living out in the cabin in the woods, in my head. But for me, I feel like I would be giving up so much. Leaving what I have now behind to go do something like that. So what was it for you that brought you to that conclusion?
I had wanted to live this way for a really long time and felt like I didn't. I don't know a better way to say it, but I was going to say living. I was going to blame it on other people, and that's not true. But I hadn't made this step yet, and I always had a good reason not to. But the desire had been there for a really long time, And then even when we talked the last podcast, we all moved out there when COVID happened. Not all
Right.
of us, but a lot of us did. And the opportunity arose. There was nothing stopping me. I had created enough space in my life that I could.
And mine's not so different, but just to share, gosh, I had my kids in school, I had a full-time job. There was nothing that said that said to go do this. And financially, I was like, there's no way I could, because I was paying rent month to month. I can't leave my job. I don't have this incredible savings to go and do this. I was bound by the system to stay in the system.
Right.
It created it. And for a lot of people, COVID was really, really challenging. And for me, it was a blessing because my kids didn't have to go to school. I had got to work from home. And it opened up a door of time to be able to go and say, well, what if we built a cabin? And the space was available, and I started out building a cabin. And then it was like, well, what if we lived in this cabin? And those choices started to kind of come together. And I have a mantra that says that if it's good in 10 years and it's good now, it's a good decision. So I built this house, saying would this still be here or be good in 10 years? Yep. Okay, then let's go ahead and do it. And with each step, there was no roadblock, right? And so when the universe and I are kind of in flow, right? And if I choose to stay in flow and things are moving easily, through that and there's no hiccups, then I say, okay, I must be doing the right thing. And so then I continue to do the next right thing and ask myself that question. But moving out there and making that choice, there was definitely a disconnect. And, you know, I went through a huge process. I had a house that I lived in for 15 years, 12 years. And I had to make a decision about all the stuff that I had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a basement that I hadn't gone through and looked at boxes in years. And I sat and I was hammed up. I couldn't do it. I was stuck. I couldn't get it done. I couldn't pack the boxes. And finally I said, I can't, I won't. And all my friends came over, and everything that was in the basement, they loaded up on the trailers and they took it to donation. And I said, if you look in the box and there's something you think is meaningful, take it out. Otherwise, it all goes.
Right.
And I let it all go. It sounds almost ethereal thinking about it, but at the time it was really hard to do and make that process happen.
Right.
Because we get attached to the way that we live, we get attached to the things that we own, we get attached to the perceptions that people have of us. We get attached to what if and the fear of what might happen if we do take that next step. But what happens when you say, I'm not doing it anymore, I'm done participating in this way? That makes a liar out of me.
Sure.
Well, and I think we live in a world that looks at things like all or nothing, or like it has to be huge, and I don't think that there has to be a separation with how you're living and the things that you want to do, and
Sure.
even lining up with the feeling of, well, what would that look like? Because there's all kinds of things you could do if you wanted to, and that, like a lot of what we've been promoting is like find a local farmer, that there's one very simple step. I could guarantee you that there's people even within city limits
Sure.
that are growing good food that would love for you to bring them 10, 20, $30 and get a box full of good veggies, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then look at the position that you've created for yourself too. Once a month, if you wanted to, or every 10 shows, you could go highlight local food sources in
Sure.
Erie.
Yeah.
Or
Well, there
put
is
the-
no shortage of food, that's for sure. I mean, our country, there is no shortage of food.
There is a shortage of good food, though.
There
I think.
is a shortage of good food, but
And there's a
also
shortage of time.
There's a shortage of desire.
Yeah.
There's a shortage of knowledge and of want. If I really dive in and I see the way that our food is produced, and I take a look at how things are grown and what it does, what big agriculture and monocropping has done to the surface of our earth and the soil degradation. If I took time to research and be informed about that, then the next time that I go to the grocery store, I'd take a look at that item and go, do I want it? Mm-hmm. And then that next choice, the easy part of participating in a good way, is to say, I'm not buying that. And we participate with our dollar. And we
Right.
put our money, if we're a capitalist money-driven system and we're operating within the system, how do I change that system? I stop participating in that. And I take my money back and I put it back in my pocket and I go to that local farmer or I go to that produce stand and I say, here you go.
Right.
No, I was just gonna say, no, you're good. Don't apologize. I kind of just cut in
snuck
there.
in
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I feel like sometimes, like, I kind of agree with Tony a little bit. Like, it almost seems like you have to hit like this almost like serendipitous seam. Like, it's so hard to break a cycle, right? Like, so. Like you were explaining, like in your personal situation, like COVID was just like this massive blessing, and it helped a lot of people out. I thought of it as like, shaking some of the cobwebs out.
Yeah.
But like it's so hard. Like the time is short. Like even if it's not, like it's so hard to get into that mindset and commit to something when you have so many other like adult responsibilities.
Sure.
So there's an example, and if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
He said, he's like, we're going to go there and I'm going to start talking and then you're just going to take over. And I'm like, do you think that'll really happen?
I think he predicted that the last time he came on the show too.
And then I stood him up, so he had to keep talking. To that point, so I'm in a program of recovery, and when we talk about recovery, we talk about having a spiritual experience, and that spiritual experience is something that comes over us, and we get it, right? We get the download, I guess, if you will. But with that program of recovery, there's two different ways in which oftentimes people experience that spiritual experience, that knowledge, that aha moment. It's one, it's kind of like the light bulb goes off and you go, oh my gosh, I get it, I see it, right? You have a coming, and then the other one is this trickle program, these little moments that happen, these little God moments, these pauses, these miracle, little things that keep happening that you go, this is good, this is good, this is good. And then you come to believe, that this is true or that this is working. And it's the same thing in making this shift. We could, in my experience, I had the moment. I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. And in other ways, and still today, there's other ways that it's the trickle program. It's the moment by moment. It's the I'm going to practice this or I'm going to shift this one thing. I'm going to take every dollar that comes from, selling my sourdough bread and I'm going to put it in this. And when there's enough, then we're going to purchase this. And it's the small steps. Or, I'm not purchasing, what's something we haven't bought in a long time?
Bread. We haven't
Bread.
bought bread.
Creamer.
We haven't bought creamer, yeah.
We're moving to
We
raw
haven't
milk.
bought meat from a grocery store, and I don't even know how long, because even ones that we don't have, we have like neighbors down the road and different people that we know.
Meat is a great example, right? I mean, okay, well, we're going to have burgers, we're going to have steaks, we're going
We
to have
still
this.
get cheese from the grocery store.
And everything that we get from the grocery store, I could fix or we could shift if we got a dairy cow.
Yeah.
So that's our
Next
support
goal.
me in this,
Yeah,
right?
no.
Because if we got a dairy cow, then we're looking at what? Cheese,
Cheese,
any kind of cheese, you name it, mozzarella, ricotta.
cream, butter.
Then we've got
Milk.
yogurt, we've
Yogurt,
got
yeah.
milk, all of that. So is there work that's going to have to go into that? Yeah. Is there a knowledge base that we're going to have to, definitely get a hand on, get it? Yes. What don't we have right now? We don't have the time.
Right.
So how do we look at our lives and say, I would like to have more time to be able to have this cow on our
And we've
farm?
started taking steps too. Instead of rushing out and buying a cow, we found where there's local organic milk.
Yes.
So looking at our consumption, what we do use, where we can get it. The people are in Cambridge Springs. It comes in a glass container. It's organic. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it costs me $5 a week.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I don't have a cow, but we have sources available and it's local enough that we can get the same
Right.
needs met, right?
And-
And that's the small step I can take.
And I think this all goes back to
Instead of
like
going on by
the
the
intention too, because like right now I feel like I could take positive steps to, find a butcher, find local sources to get our vegetables and our meats around here, but I would really have to be intentional about it, and I would have to schedule it and have time and make the effort to go in rather than just like stopping at Tops on my way home because I don't know
Truly.
what the fuck else to do with how am I going to feed myself? I don't want to order out. I don't want to get fast food or whatever. I'm going to stop here and grab a chicken breast and make something nice for dinner, cook up some noodles. Whereas if I were to, I would have to have it because I can't just stop at my local farmer's house most of the time on my way home from work to make myself dinner. I would have to put more time and more thought and more effort into this aspect of my life.
Yes, that's absolutely
And it goes
true.
back to the intention, you know what I mean? And having that intention and having that goal and that plan and putting the time in. And if you don't put that time in, and like, I know that if I were to get a farmer and buy my meat from them and my vegetables from them, I would probably save myself a ton of time long term. But it's making that transition from, grabbing something really quick from the grocery store down the street on my way home to make dinner to getting a bunch of things,
Well, and
storing
you're
it.
still gonna do that some.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I just got a pizza from Country Fair on the way here because I worked until 4:30.
Right.
Would I like a future where I have a better option?
Sure.
Absolutely. And am I going to beat myself? I'm never going to think about that pizza again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm thankful for that I got it, but
No,
I'm
no
not going
doubt.
to live in this place of it's one way or the other. But we change things when they become important to us.
Sure.
And what I was getting at earlier is I think that idea of that it has to be all or nothing is what hems us up a bunch of times.
Absolutely.
Like a small step, if you wanted to, would be next year I'm going to do a CSA. And that's how it'll start. It'll get dropped off at my house. It'll take away that, or else I'll have to make one stop one time a week, and I get a box of vegetables, and I'm supporting a local farmer with a healthier food option for myself.
Right.
That's not a big deal, really. You could give 20 minutes. It's more the idea of what that step will look like. So a lot of times with the kids and ourselves, like one of the things that we'll do to prime the pump for a transition is just for a while it'll be like, well, I wonder what that'll look like. I wonder what that would feel like. And I'm curious about this, because then it deflates all the big idea of all or nothing, or I have to do all this, or I have to climb this mountain to make this happen. I have to change all this at once, because that's just
Everything at once.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah.
Got to drop that name in there at least once a podcast.
Yes,
Sorry.
thank you. Well, and it is everything at once.
Everything that's possible.
But that's
at once.
we're in this world, we're in this playground of dichotomy and opposites. It is everything at once, and then when you take one singular moment at a time and present yourself to it and participate in it, you get to have one thing, one step at a time.
I feel like people are, I mean, I know I can definitely feel like this. I feel like people are so, like, feel like they're walking a tightrope with life.
Oh my gosh,
to like the point of like just one misstep is like could just ruin everything.
Yeah,
that
dude.
you're afraid to even shift any of that balance.
But here's the crazy thing, dude, is that sticking your hand in the soils makes you feel better. The things that you need are the things that you don't want to do, and I dare you to like let it all die. We had like this conversation, this joke of, for a moment, I don't gotta go deep into the backstory, but at Dale's, where she was working, there was snooty comments made, and I'm like, we just need to stick that woman in a field. By 10 o'clock, all the fears that she has are going to come to the surface. There'll be a freak out. There'll be the decompression. There'll be all the shit that you don't want to see or you don't want to do, but damn, that's what needs to happen.
Right.
It's the things that we don't want to sit with that are fucking us up, man.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so, like, it's that idea that I might be uncomfortable in this moment. Well, you're going to be uncomfortable. You know what the alternative is to being uncomfortable in this moment? At least then you get to choose it. You get to choose to participate in being uncomfortable, because if you continue not to put any focus on it, you're going to be very uncomfortable and you won't have any choice with it.
And it's so funny because we'll take that long-term uncomfortability instead of that short-term uncomfortability every single time.
Oh, yeah.
Versus that long-term, like, delayed gratification for short-term happiness.
Yeah.
It's so funny how it's opposite like that. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Well, it's a evil that you're so it's like, oh, this might be really bad, and I know I should change something, but at least I know what this feels like.
It's all an idea too. It's all a mental construct,
Right.
man. You know what I mean? Because, like, say even those little changes, those little steps that we just talked about, like one, changing your perception, changing your consciousness, just one shift of a degree, could be like, oh, I'm really curious about this, and it could flourish into like something that you didn't anticipate enjoying to being a staple part of your life.
Right.
It doesn't, it's that idea of the unknown, or thinking that we need perfection, or thinking all of these things, and none of it's true. You know what I mean? And not unless you make it true, not unless you want it to be true. And like, some of the changes have been that the more information I got, I just could no longer not look at, like cold showers. I've been taking cold showers. You
good.
and I have jumped in Lake Erie
yeah.
together, but I've been doing cold showers
Good.
for a while. And it got to be to a point.
Not me either.
It got to be to the point where I couldn't ignore the benefits of it anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't be like, oh, I just don't want to do this because it's uncomfortable, knowing the benefits that it would bring to my life, knowing that the health benefits that it would bring by committing 1 minute
Right.
a day.
To a cold shower.
You're not going to see me in the cold shower. That's for
Well,
sure. But
This doesn't have to be a mono program. Everything, it'll be different for every person. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, you might like to have, like, the lifestyle that we talked about briefly, the contrast in the lifestyles that we're living. It doesn't matter You know what I mean? Even if systematically, if we were living in a good way, there could still be super centers that brought you good, fair, and equitable food.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That still all makes sense. It's that the intention behind it isn't that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, the capitalism has overwrought us and made us profit-driven rather than trying to, actually do a good job, I'll call it.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that it's kept people away from it was, like, you wouldn't believe how many times growing up I heard people say, well, I'm not going to live like a caveman. We have the technology. There doesn't have to be much that you would have to give up from the way that you're currently living right now. And even any changes that happen in your life, if you chose them, it doesn't have to be drastic.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it could be, I'm going to experiment with a new food this month.
Yep.
Unless it's kohlrabi.
No, kohlrabi is amazing, and he's got a thing against it. But it was the new food that I tried. It was the new food that I tried.
What's a kohlrabi?
A kohlrabi. It's like an above ground, almost like a turnip. You're like, what's a turnip?
No, I do know what a turnip is, actually.
And it's a really kind of sweet, crisp vegetable, and you'll see it oftentimes. You've probably had it, unbeknownst to you, in stir fry.
Sure.
Shredded, real small.
Okay.
I like to eat it, slice it raw. He does not, but
And I'll eat anything.
Yeah.
Actually, but
Yeah, right. I get hungry enough, I'm going to eat it.
there was a thing that you were talking about, but that I wanted to go back to because it was in my head. But it's a shift in perspective when we look at change. And we look at it and we say, well, I have a fear of the unknown, and there is. That makes sense, right?
Absolutely,
A
sure.
fear of the
Sure.
unknown. I don't know what's going to happen. Of course I'm concerned or I'm nervous or I'm fearful about what's on the other side of that. But a small shift in language can help shift that in your mind.
yeah, big time.
I'm in my mind a lot, right? And so my mind drives me more so than probably anything. But that shift in perspective from fear of the unknown to embracing the mystery. And that sounds just so much softer and so much more intriguing and like, okay, well, I could embrace the mystery. What's on
Right.
the other side of that, And therefore, that shift, that change, it softens because it doesn't have to be some cataclysmic decision or life uprooting or shifting. However, if as a system and as a overall, we don't, we're going to have a fear of the unknown.
Right.
I am afraid of what will happen if, as a culture, as a community, as a society, we do not shift our focus to something that is more sustainable, that is more agriculture, friendly.
Right.
If we don't do those things, we are going to see the ramifications of that. And we may not see it in our lifetime, but my children will see it. And that's something that I'm not willing to participate any longer in.
Sure.
I'm not going to participate in creating a world in which my children will suffer more because of the decisions that I make today. So how can I do that? And so talk about purpose. Are your children your purpose? Are your people, if you don't have children, are your people your purpose? When you go out and you take a hike in the woods and you smell what's in the air and how beautiful it is that your purpose? It doesn't matter. But that you have one does. And my hope is that purpose is in line with the idea that I'd like to see things flourish on Earth. I'd like to see things sustain on Earth. I'd like to stop doing the damage that's been done and begin to take steps to undo it. And we have the science, we have the information, we do not have the action and the people moving towards right living in the masses that will need to be.
Right.
There are people. I mean, we talk about social media influencers and kind of a joke that, like, I have no idea what they're really saying because that's not on my feed. That's not in my, you know what I mean? When I go onto my social media account and I start scrolling, I'm seeing backyard meat rabbits. I'm seeing raised bed gardening. I'm seeing, growing garlic in the fall. I've tuned into the things that bring joy to me, and so where we put our attention, that grows, where our energy grows, and it happens to be that we want to put it towards a sustainable system, a sustainable future, a more positive purpose,
And one of the big things that I think that I'm taking away from this this conversation is that I don't have to move out to a farm to do that. I can just make more conscious decisions with the way that I consume. And I think that's a relatively less scary idea for myself and a lot of other people, to just be a little bit more conscious about how I spend my money instead of, eating the mass processed food and all the other things that are out there. And luckily I have good friends, and there are lots of wonderful people that are farming and doing things in a good way, who are already building that infrastructure, who need someone like me to come and, buy my meat from them.
Yeah, right.
And there's, I guarantee you, and I did it earlier today, looking at different avenues and sources for, what outlets are out there for our product, and our produce, and our meat. And the number of different types of sites that will literally deliver to your door.
Right.
Some of them may not be in the Erie area right now, but down towards Pittsburgh, creeping up towards Meadville. Online markets that you go on and you take a look at the farmers, and you source your meat, and you source your eggs, and you source your produce, and it'll be delivered to you.
And that's been growing, right?
And that's been growing.
In the short period of time since we've been doing
There's
it.
another company called Farmish that is an online app that if you hop onto Farmish and you download the app, you can take a look. It's like an Etsy for farmers.
Cool.
And you put your information, you find your local vendors, and you can order.
Right.
And then you make agreements with that farmer as to where your meetup is going to be or where your pickup is going to be. But that makes sense to me. That makes sense. That if I can do that if Amazon can hop on there and do it with every type of good you
Anything
can
you ever
imagine,
need, yeah.
or
Right.
Temu, I can get on there and find anything I want for 99 cents, then why can't I find the things that mean something to me?
Yeah.
Well, I can do that with our food sources.
Just gotta look for them.
Right.
And it's not that hard.
Right.
It's not if you make a moment to take that intention and put it towards that,
And it's really incredible, the availability of information and knowledge too that's out there if you just
my gosh.
take the time to sit down and look for it. If it's not, it just exists somewhere in the internet universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody out there has already had this thought and put something together to be able to resolve this problem, because I think that's one of the things that human beings are particularly good at, is solving problems and finding ways to make things work, especially with the technology and the things that we have around surrounding us now. There's really not any problem that can't be solved with the right amount of effort put into it.
Right.
Right.
Well, and talking about reinventing or doing something original, nothing that we're doing is original.
Sure.
I mean, people have been farming
Yeah.
for centuries.
Oh, yeah,
you
for
know?
sure, for
People
sure.
have been putting seeds in the ground for a really long time. There's nothing new. And what I've learned along this process, too, is that there's really no wrong way to do it either. The only thing that I can do wrong is not doing it. So
Right.
if I want to grow a garden, I go out and I put the seed in the ground. And then the next year I learned some things about that, and I put a couple more seeds in the ground because I know a little bit more, and every year, every time you practice it, you learn more and more.
Right.
So it's
Right.
not an immediate gratification. I'm not going to get my, Instagram ready garden in a year. It's going to take time, and
Right.
it's going to be worth it.
And I think there's a big difference between doing something wrong and doing something and not doing something well.
Oh,
You know
right.
what I mean?
You keep getting
Because
better at
you
it.
keep getting
Yeah.
better, yeah. I mean, your first time, you're probably going to make mistakes, no matter what it is, whatever challenge,
Absolutely.
gardening, whatever. And you're going to learn from it, and you're going to keep going, hopefully, and you're going to learn more, and it's going to get better.
So like one of our benchmarks for next year is to try to grow the majority. I don't want to open it and say produce, but we're going to try to grow enough potatoes and onions and garlic of what we consume.
Cool.
That's one small step.
I feel
a
like
lot of
that's
potatoes.
how do you keep
I like potatoes.
the potatoes and the onions good for long enough?
Cold storage.
Cold storage.
Yeah.
So put them in a big freezer.
Put them
or
in a
big-
put 'em in a
on-
root cellar, so something that's cold and dark, and they'll stay
Dry.
and dry.
and they'll stay there
Yeah.
for.
Which is something that
good
we don't
long
have
time.
nowadays.
Yeah.
Right.
People don't have root
I have one.
cellars.
Oh, and we might
I
fail.
believe you.
We,
We might use yours.
fail miserably. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
We'll see.
Right.
You know?
I've actually thought about doing like my own little private humblage in my root cellar, because
Yeah.
it's like it
Right.
only opens from one side, so once I'm in there, I'm like locked in there forever. And it's nice and dark and small. It's great.
Cool. be similar to being in the ground. man, or
Exactly,
you
just
would
like
be,
in the
kind
pit. Yeah,
you
kind
know?
of.
Yeah.
But
Whoever's tending fire, let them know. Come check on you.
everything is it's all there too, and the knowledge has been there. And I feel like one of the things that we are finding, or people are finding, as far as like sustainability culture and farming culture goes, is going back to those old ways. Like, I don't need some fancy machine to keep my potatoes and my onions fresh. I put them in a hole in the ground,
Literally.
and close it.
Or you leave them in the ground. So half
Right.
the potatoes that you could harvest at the end of the season can stay right in the ground. And you don't have to pull those up until there's going to be a deep, deep frost. Now, how do I know this? Well, because we watched what happened after a deep, deep frost. And so experience.
Yeah, mushy
and
potatoes.
you get mushy potatoes. But these are the things that you learn as you go.
Right.
The other ones you harvest and you use. You know, we had fresh cut French fries, and it's the taste is different. You
Right.
know?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
just like when we started this conversation about the pork, I know it's going to be miles different, just because anything that's organic or well taken care of just tastes better than the things that are monocropped and mass produced.
Yep.
And I feel like there's such a common thought among people that farming is monocropping. You know what I mean? You got soybeans or whatever, you got corn, you got potatoes, and that's all you grow, and you grow millions of it. And really, that is like the antithesis of sustainability to me in my mind right now. You know what I mean?
It is, not just in your mind.
Okay,
it is
good.
the antithesis to sustainability. Monocropping is the number one reason for soil degradation across our country. You know,
Right.
you have fields and fields and fields of corn, 75% of which goes to waste, goes to fodder, goes back to, monocropping is not.
It's not
It's
the
big ag. It's the
Right.
result of big agriculture. And when big agriculture and big farm get together, then you have
monocropping and pollution and
Yeah.
degradation of soil and degradation of water.
and you have
and-
mass chemicals being
Right.
produced that are being spread onto your fields.
I believe all this is true. Like the word root for human comes from humus, comes from soil. Like that's what we come from. And that monocropping does kill the soil. Once they use the fertilizer, 1 year, 2 years, that soil's dead.
Right.
And the loss of soil degradation is a benchmark for the fall of empire. You can look at that. Like when other empires have fallen, there's soil degradation is one of the benchmarks. Like all the things it's hard to approach the topic without going way heavy or way deep. But like the things that we were talking about, the changes, we're either going to decide to participate in a change or we're not.
Right.
So like you're talking about how, so it needs to become important, and everything right now is very light and airy, or the loudest talking head.
Sure.
Like part of, and I'm not going to go too far off to the right. Part of like when I hear you talk about changes, like and you. Both of you guys are very forward thinking and have exposed yourself to a lot of information, and just the act of being alive is going to give you more. But part of like the big resistance to that change is us as humans acknowledging that at some point we're going to die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that death is going to happen, and it's us avoiding that, running from that makes us make these very poor decisions.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Culturally, if we were able to come to that with some grace, we'd get to start to live again and make better decisions, that potentially are based having more importance on our people than just ourselves.
I think that's a big thing that's happening right now is like people are like, well, you just see it like I don't want to work so hard for X and most of the time it's a company,
Yes,
it's
right.
not like doing like work with the land or whatever, but it's
some
like
change happened, man. You're right.
right. But people are like, I'm not gonna work hard for X, so and so for this many years because I'm gonna die. So like I'm gonna enjoy myself, but it gets skewered a little bit because it's not like, well, this delayed gratification. I'm gonna put work into the land. It's like, okay, I want to do all of like the almost like, no, I don't want to say lustful, but like the pleasures. You know, I just want the pleasures without any of the work that goes into those pleasures, and that's kind of where the world's at right now.
I think so too. I think that a lot of people are desperately seeking that instant gratification and looking for that to find them give them purpose, when in reality the purpose comes from these long drawn out efforts, like raising a child or making a farm or starting a business or whatever it is that's going on.
Do you know how much joy I have in a day if, you know, I'm the only one home and there's work being done and I'm with, I mean, these ducks following me around and I'm talking to them and we're interacting, and the work that goes into it. If I'm carrying buckets and I'm lifting up bales of hay and I'm moving soil and I'm working with my body, with the land, how much reward there is and how much joy I take from that. Like, damn the man for making me waste how many prior years. I am going to die. I don't want to work it's not worth it to work for this person or for this company any longer.
Right.
I'm going to go and work for myself, and the work that I've done makes that reward that much greater. And so I'm not looking for the easy pleasure anymore, because at the end of the day, like how soundly I sleep from working throughout the day, oh my gosh, that's the reward.
I think that sedentary lifestyle that so many people are living, that work at a desk or work at an office or work wherever they are where they're not engaging their body physically, is also like such a huge detriment, because there's so many positive results just from moving around and lifting buckets and picking things up and putting them down and moving. There's just so much like trapped you know, feel good chemicals in all of our muscles and in our gut and everything else that is just that's just stagnant, you know what I mean? And in order to get that out, we're seeking these instant gratification mouth pleasures, or, you know, video games, movies, the TikTok influencers, the 15-minute reel that's going to make me laugh. And
Reels are 15 minutes?
15 seconds.
I was going to say, they don't let me go more than a minute and a
Yeah.
half.
No, people don't have the attention span to watch 15-minute.
I
Right,
found
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
Come
15,
on.
that's too much.
Give me the bite.
15 second. But like, that is something that is so lost too, is that level of work, you know what I mean? I know that I notice a huge difference in myself if I don't go to, because I have a pretty sedentary job, you know, I'm at a desk most of the time. I move around in the office and I drive to different places and whatnot, but if I don't engage my body physically and mentally, I know that my brain does not work in the same ways, because then I get that doom and gloom, like, what the fuck is the point of this whole thing? I'm gonna die someday.
Oh, yeah.
Why am I doing this?
I think that, like, the real issue, and like, I'm an optimist, you know, so, like, I always hope for, like, the best possible scenario, but, like, there always seems, or not always, but for so many people, there's either, like, a very real or perceived catastrophic event that triggers something, you know, like a near-death experience, a diagnosis that makes you say, well, oh my God, I am gonna die. And then that's when the change is made. And I just hope, and I have faith that on a larger scale, Earth scale, human scale, that it's not like something where it gets so close to like extinction, even like extinction or something awful for the change to happen.
But the more that we numb our senses in that, the greater the catastrophic event has to be in order to get it. If I say to my kid and he's on a video game or he's watching something, and I say, hey, and I say it in a quiet tone, and then I say it again, and then I say it again, and then for the fourth time I have to scream, and I'm like, why do I have to yell for you to hear me? He's like, I didn't even know. And he didn't know. He didn't know that I was talking to him, right? And so, and I asked that question, does it have to be an extreme for you to hear me or for you to understand? And in that tone or in that vein, do we, as humans, do we need that big of a noise in order to make any changes? I don't know if psychologically we have to, But the way it looks like it is going right now, it sure does need to be
They've definitely been conditioned.
significant enough. You know,
Don't Look Up was a documentary, man.
They
Right,
showed
yeah.
us what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, they showed us who we are.
But it's and getting back to ourselves too, because like those faces, those masks we put on, like Silas was. Can I tell a story, or should I not?
I don't know what story you're telling.
This beautiful little dude that's in my life was talking to a girl on the phone the other day, and I'm hearing like all this big bravado, you know, and I didn't even tell him this shit, you know, and hearing him go this dialogue going on between these two young people for 10 minutes or so, and I'm just thinking in my head, dude, like I'm so lucky I get to know you because you're so much cooler than that.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
I mean, if you just be yourself, like you're amazing.
Right.
You know,
You don't have to appear bigger than you are.
No, but and I think culturally that's what we
We're
do.
supposed to
We're
do.
so invested in what everyone else is thinking about, and that's another part of what that death gives you back too. You know, or the acknowledgement of that death is that you get to live then. You get to be you then. You know what I mean? Because none of the rest of that really matters, dude, and it's gonna happen.
Right.
You know, and so this is. I'm sure you guys have all seen that saying, like after you acknowledge that, then you have two lives, and after you acknowledge that, then you really get to start living, you know. And it's true.
Right.
You know, we don't have to be wrapped up in all that busy life. Like I was talking to my son about this the other day, and I was like, you know what that culture has for you? It has more. It'll give you more.
Right.
It has more of it.
Right.
When you want more, it has more. So like that busy life, it's gonna keep calling you, and you know, and they ain't saying there's, I'm sure, surely beautiful parts of your life that you would never want to give away, but the other parts, like, why you want more, there'll be more.
Sure.
You know.
There's definitely always that opportunity to reach further, and I don't think that there's any need to or any reason to discourage people from that, but I think that we can also use that more in a positive way that's reflective of our own personal beliefs, you know. And with a certain level of success definitely comes with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
And all of the things that go on in this world are dependent on us making those positive decisions, especially when we have the means and the ability and the platform or whatever it is that we have to be able to do so.
That's right, and that's part of the bummer is that the technology and that it's already there. We have a good way to move. It's just we need really good salesmen.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we're here, dude. We're talking about it. We're doing our part.
Yeah.
Hopefully the people out there are listening
Right.
and can take something away from this tonight. You guys, it's been a pleasure. I'm so happy that you stopped by and came out to talk about White Pine Homestead.
Yeah.
And look them up on Facebook, everybody, if you're looking for rabbit, pork, sourdough bread. I'm sure there's other things.
Lard. I'm going to become a lard salesman. There's like a ton of good benefits to lard, like the misconception that it's not good for you. It actually has. There's only one other thing
That's
in
a
the
huge
world
thing.
that has more vitamin D in it.
Interesting.
Cod liver oil. As long
Which
as
nobody wants.
As long as the hogs are exposed to sun, they have more vitamin D than anything else. They have 42% mono unsaturated fats, so healthy cholesterol. And what was the other? I need to practice being a large salesman, but that's
This is a good shot, dude. You're doing great.
But the salesman comes to Dave's point, just to bring it up again, as an optimist. I'm absolutely an optimist. I believe in the goodness of people. Like, I like people. I'm one of those people who like people.
Sure.
Just for who they are, right? And just in general, I think they're fascinating. I believe that we're going to make the right choices. And I believe that if given the opportunity for an individual to choose one versus the other, they're going to make the choice that's right for them. So
Sure.
for us to say, you know, oh, this is a good way, this is a good thing, it's not a preaching, it's an encouragement that, like, we can do this and we can do it together. And because I believe in you, I'm willing to help if you would like, you know, or if you
Right.
need help or if you need guidance to to find where to go to get the thing that you need that's going to help you. You know, what does that look like? I don't know, but
I
for
dare you to
me-
come out to our house, man. You have an open invite.
Oh, okay.
Come out to the
I'll
house.
bring him out.
Please.
I will come out.
Please
And
do.
you know what? I know that we're on the positive timeline in this universe, people, because this man just told me that lard is good for you. You know what I'm saying?
But that makes you
Yeah,
question
moving on.
everything that's ever been told to you, right? I'm being for real. I'm being dead
absolutely.
serious because we had so much lard. I started like digging in. Is this healthy for us to use on a daily or weekly basis? And oh my gosh,
It's
absolutely.
crazy. It's one of the biggest
you know?
lies that big pharma and the health industry has told us for so long is that those monounsaturated fats are
Yeah.
what are going to kill us.
Right.
And there's so many of those lies. There's so many
So
of those
many,
stories
if you just
going on,
look.
and it's not for me to
And
uncover all of those, though I can be passionate about a certain number of them. But gosh, ask the questions. You know, like ask the questions. What are
Right.
you eating? What are you choosing? What have you been told? Is that true? Is that a reality? And if you doubt it even a little bit, just go do it yourself and see.
Right.
Put a seed in the ground and see what happens. Put an heirloom seed in the ground and see what happens. You know? And if you don't know the difference between a seed and an heirloom seed, then start there.
There you go.
You
You
know?
guys heard it.
That's where
Listen to Dale.
that's where it
Listen
all
to
starts.
Josh. Get some lard. It's good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you everybody for listening. Thanks to all of our sponsors and all of our Patreon people. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Hit me up for photography. It's going to be winter, so I'm not going to have very many jobs. So we
Do
love
it.
you guys. Have a great night. Peace out.
Goodbye.